Hello, happy Saturday and good morning. My name is Meghan Maes. I am an attorney and a mediator in the state of Minnesota, and this is Being Civil in Minnesota. I come here on Saturdays to talk about family law and the court issues that are happening in Minnesota, helping people get information and resources. This is not legal advice. There's a Facebook group called Being Civil in Minnesota where you can ask questions, and thankfully somebody asked a question about what happens with pets. So today we're going to talk about what happens when a relationship ends and you guys have a pet. Minnesota does not recognize pets as children, although you may hear them referred to as fur babies by many people. They are legally considered personal property. Now, attorneys in courts, as a pet owner myself, we acknowledge that pets have a very special place. And so while they are personal property, they're personal property with special attachments and emotional value. Because they are personal property, in Minnesota, there are certain rules that govern what happens with property. So what it's going to depend on is, are you guys married? Is this pet being homed, or is the decision about this pet happening within the context of a divorce? And if that is the case, then you have to consider, is the pet marital property? Division of marital property means that the court is going to divide marital property equitably. If the animal has a high value, the court can consider whether or not that value should be considered in dividing the personal property. Now, that is just for property that's acquired during your marriage. If you had a pet before marriage, or if you and your partner are not married, but you got a pet together, the rules of personal property still apply. It's generally the same for married couple, except for that you're not going to have it in the context of a divorce or a marital termination paperwork. You can show ownership of property several different ways. You can show your purchase or adoption paperwork. That would be a really good way. If you acquired the animal as a gift, so for example, my current pet Duke, I have had Duke for a very long time, and he was a gift to me. And when I got a divorce, we put in our agreement that Duke would be awarded to me. And that was because it was a gift. It's no longer considered marital property. Looking at whether or not the pet is licensed, whose name is on the vet paperwork. There will be a myriad of factors if you don't have the paperwork. I know sometimes you'll get a farm cat or an animal that needed to be rehomed, and you don't always have that kind of paperwork. So courts will look at outside information. They'll look at who cared for the pet, who can give the pet the best life. And there are times where somebody doesn't want an animal anymore and they will abandon a pet with somebody else. And that can be really burdensome and frustrating. In Minnesota, there are certain steps that you can take to have certain property be declared abandoned. And then at that point, you can legally do what you want to with it. But there are steps you have to take, and the process does take 6 months. But that is certainly an option if that is your situation. I work a lot in high conflict cases and cases involving domestic abuse. And so oftentimes pets are used as a way to control victims. There will be either threats to the animal if the victim leaves, threats to keep the animal if the victim leaves, and that can be really hard. And if a victim doesn't have any place to go, the thought of, well, what's going to happen if I can't take my animal with me is something that weighs very heavily. Thankfully, in Minnesota, you can ask for a restraining order if there's been domestic abuse, and the court will help with a restraining order to also protect pets. There are agencies that will help with transitions if the place you're moving to initially does not allow pets, or you don't have a plan for a pet-friendly permanent residence because you weren't planning for this. There are agencies that help with that. So what can a court actually do? Well, most people are going to negotiate this. They do not want judges to decide this, and not because judges are not capable of deciding this, but it's just such a very personal decision, like custody and parenting time cases. Oftentimes I hear from the bench to the parties, you are in the best situation possible to make the decisions for your kids, and I want you to keep your decision-making power. Same for pets, but it's not always possible when you have one high conflict party. So like any court order, if you have an agreement, you can put it in writing, and having it in writing and put into a court order means it's enforceable like any other court order. You'll want to be clear who has custody of the pet, what is the pet, are there any financial responsibilities, are there going to be any access provisions for shared time for the other party. All those things can be discussed. And if you are interested in things like that, there are processes called mediation where you and the other party can talk with a neutral individual like me and try to work out what will be best for your guys' situation, and eliminating barriers, creative problem solving, shared calendaring, lots of ideas, lots of ways to ensure that you can at least make the best decision possible and keep that for you. So mediation can be a great option as well. If that can't happen, you can go to court. And again, court's going to want to see ownership evidence. It's personal property, and that is going to carry a lot of weight. So obviously, pets are very important. I have pets. I love my dog. I would be very heartbroken if I didn't have him, but he can't speak for himself, and neither can your pet. So if you want to make sure that your pet is going to not be subject to a property dispute later, make sure you are tracking these things in the front end, getting the documentation so that if there is ever a question down the road, that there can be assistance with either theft of personal property or enforcement of a court order. So if you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat. Let me know if this is interesting to you. You can ask more questions on the Facebook group, Being Civil in Minnesota. And there's 50 other episodes of this on our YouTube channel. So please subscribe, and I'll see you next Saturday.